Good morning. As of this recording, we know the California governor has signed SB 518, one of the so-called repair package bills. That particular Senate bill is to create a bureau for descendants of American slavery. And part of our opposition to that, initially they were talking about putting it into the Department of Justice, and at the last minute they decided to not do that. It will go into two separate existing offices, but what is still not legit with it is that it's opening to service other people, folks who are not descendants of people emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery. And it is part of an overall package that the California Legislative Black Caucus presented this year instead of bringing back reparation bills. So again, last year we had two very important reparation bills that Senator Stephen Bradford had put up. One was to create a standalone agency that was exclusively for descendants of people who were emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery. And the second bill he had presented, Senate Bill 1331, was to create a fund in which California was to start putting money into so they could pay out the recommended funds that the California Reparations Task Force suggested, is that descendants of people emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery get paid up to $1.2 million. So, and another thing with that fund was that not only was it for the state of California, but for other entities like banks who were involved in U.S. chattel slavery, insurance companies, and others could also contribute to that fund. Some people say 1.2 million is nothing compared to what we're owed, but again, we're talking on a state level. And we also know that that wasn't going to be one lump sum. We were very likely looking at payouts. And a part of what CJEC had did was suggest that our seniors, our elders, would be the first to start receiving payments. Some of the things we know are wrong with this repair package is that there is a Senate Bill 437 which calls for another study of up to 3 to 5 years, which will further prolong descendants of people emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery from receiving any type of real reparations. In addition, last year there was $12 million set aside to implement reparations, and over the course of this year we found out that $6 million will be going to the California state universities for a study. Another $6 million is to go to the Tides Foundation to allocate to different groups for reparations education. But we also found out that an additional $6 million will be going to the implementing the structure of this bureau that Gavin Newsom just signed into law. Now, we also found that with the $6 million going to the California state universities, they will also be able to partner with nonprofits to do this study. So over the course of this year, many of us who understand all the different political shenanigans involved in this have said no. If they blocked reparations last year, then they should have come with reparations this year. And again, the California Legislative Black Caucus said, they were coming with a repair package, and they presented a lot of these lower hanging policies. And we know Senate Bill 437 is basically amendments that Gavin Newsom suggested last year to Senator Stephen Bradford as he presented Senate Bill 1403 calling for an agency to identify those of us who are descendants of folks emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery. So this year we found a lot of opposition, or a number of these nonprofits and other special interest groups who have basically been positioned to receive some of these funds, whether it be the funds that's going to tithes, and tithes will be, distributing those funds in the name of so-called reparations education. But like I was saying, we recently found out the other $6 million going to the California state universities could potentially also go to some of these nonprofits to do whatever, not exactly sure what, they would be partnering for in that study. But this exposes one of the primary issues with the funding that does come into our communities. Too often it goes to a lot of the same nonprofits to pay six-figure salaries, if not more. And in turn, that leaves the many people in the community who are really in need without. And these officials, nonprofits, they team up and they do these giveaways. Like around Christmas, we know Isaac Bryan had been coming into the village giving out toys and other handouts, whereas were people to access the $1.2 million that was recommended by the California Reparations Task Force, people wouldn't need these handouts. And with the study now, potentially going for another 3 to 5 years, we know right now with the rate at which black people are being driven out of California, we will have even smaller population in 3 to 5 years. And we also know a couple other things that are happening in 3 to 5 years. We know Gavin Newsom is looking to run for president, but we also know the Olympics is coming to Los Angeles. And there's clearly been an effort to push black people out of this city between now and then. So that is why the number of us have really been raising up these issues, because one, this is a long overdue debt. And we finally got it to the finish line last year just to get it blocked by these misleaders. And at that point, we knew a lot of them had betrayed us. A lot of them are corrupt. And this year, unfortunately, we see those who are aligning themselves with them are again the ones who potentially may be the beneficiaries of this corruption. So that's why we're calling on the many of you to come forward, because another thing we learned this past week is on a county level here in Los Angeles, last month in September, the city began to distribute cash cards to immigrants affected by the ICE raids. The county of Los Angeles, in the name of helping immigrants, it will start paying out $5,000 to small businesses affected by the ICE raids and street vendors affected by the ICE raids. But again, ignoring the ongoing crisis that is happening in the black community. Another thing we found this past week, the governor also signed into law protections to combat what they're saying is anti-Semitism. And the thing with that is a number of reports are saying that Jews are the second highest targeted group for hate. But guess who the number one group is? Black people. So again, they ignore the number one most targeted group for hate crimes, and they again do all they can to support the Jewish community. This is in addition to something that's already happening on the state level in 2022. They allocated $36 million over a 3-year period, so that's basically $12 million a year, to help survivors of the Jewish Holocaust. And this year they added another $14+ million to that. So that's like $50 million over a 4-year period to support the Jewish community that's already doing way better than the black community. But what we learned in a meeting earlier this week, when the issue of the county now declaring a state of emergency for those who are affected by the ICE raids, to provide even further resources to support them, is that we have to have more of us come out and raise up what we're going through right now, y'all. Part of why we get overlooked, or part of why they say they overlook us, is because we don't show up when it's time to vote. We don't show up in these weekly council and county supervisor meetings. But this is something over the next several months we're going to really attempt to get more of you to start identifying whether you're dealing with eviction, whether you're dealing with potential foreclosure on your home or other properties, whether you are in business and you're going through hardships, to start raising up that we have long since been in an emergency. We are most definitely in a crisis. In addition to raising this up, we're also asking people to start identifying that we are descendants of people who were emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery. Part of what CJEC did manage to do this year is to get another bill to the governor's desk. I believe it's Senate Bill 515, which will start having the state, county, and city and other municipalities to start putting on different applications when they ask people to identify our background, is now those of us who are descendants of people emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery will have a specific area to say that we're that, so they can start disaggregating us from just lumping us into as being black. When people talk about Asians, you got Koreans, you got Chinese, you got Filipinos, and a number of different Asians, and they are disaggregating that so they can identify them specifically. And now that is what those of us who are descendants of people emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery are also putting on the line. So as I'm being made to look like I'm the bad guy by some of these folks who are looking to receive the corruption money, the $18 million or at least $12 million that is being paid off to basically keep the California Legislative Caucus members in office, California Legislative Black Caucus members in office, for denying the many of us what we're owed. So they're paying this $12 million to the small few who they know usually come out and vote. But what we have to do is reach out to the many more who will be affected over the next 3 to 5 years, very likely driven out of the state, driven further into poverty, or in some cases, some will find other means to, generate income so they can continue the cost of living in Los Angeles. But in addition to whatever else is going on, we're asking people to really consider some of the things I just said. One, identifying the hardships. A lot of times people don't like folks to know they're being evicted, or their home's about to go into foreclosure, or their business is starting to go down. But these are things we have to be very loud about. Just like over the summer, folks were loud about these ICE raids, and now they're being very loud about the hate crimes that are being exhibited in the Jewish community, even though some of what they are basically considering hate crimes we know is not, as they are now attempting to criminalize folks for simply speaking out about what's happening in Palestine, while ignoring the true crimes that many of us in our community, black folks in our community, descendants of folks emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery, are continuing to deal with. And in addition to start identifying whether we're speaking at these official meetings, whether we're writing these folks, whether we're calling, emailing these folks, to start letting them know that we are descendants of people emancipated from U.S. chattel slavery. All right, Saturday morning. Love y'all. Let's make this happen.